The British Armed Forces are facing a massive recruitment crisis.
Our army, for example, would be expended in 6 months to a year.
So this is cyclical, but it has to be fixed.
If I can do it in COD, I'll just stay there.
Compulsory national service.
Not a fighter.
Armies.
Welcome to Tactical Truths, the go-to series for military news, tactical analysis, and frontline stories that matter. Before we get started, I need your help. 73% of you who watch regularly haven't subscribed yet. If you like what we do, hit that subscribe button, it's free, and helps us make this show better for you every single week. I'm Phil Campion, former UK SAS, and this is Tactical Truths. Conscription's back on the table. But would it even work? Would today's youth fight for Britain or fold at the first shout? I'm Phil Campion, and in this episode of the Tactical Truths, we're asking the hard question no politician wants to touch. Does this generation have what it takes to fight and die for our values? Let's take a look at what the press are saying and then stand by for what my thoughts are at the end. Right, let's have a look at this then.
The British Armed Forces are facing a massive recruitment crisis. In 2010, the army was 100,000 strong.
That's a lot of. That's better than what it is now. It's not a lot. It's still not a massive army, that, but 100,000, right? 2010. Keep that figure in mind.
Now it's just 76,000 and could even go down to 52,000 within 10 years.
Okay, is that solely down to recruitment, though? Or is there a retention issue there as well? I'm not touching that today, but just have it in the back of your mind. Do you know what I mean?
So why is the army attracting fewer young people? Let's ask people on London streets if they would join the army.
Here we go. This is going to be really interesting, this, because you're going to get, hopefully, a mixed response here. But you're going to get quite a few. You're not going to, well, I'm certainly not going to like, you might not like them either.
I wouldn't go to a foreign country to kill anyone else. I'm not a fighter. I'm a lover.
Don't really want to.
I don't really want to, but quantify it, mate. Quantify, why not? Should somebody else do it for you?
If I can do it in COD, I'll just stay there.
I could do it in COD. Maybe we could fight the next war in Call of Duty.
One of the reasons I did join up is because if there was ever going to be a war, I'd rather be trained already for it.
Personally,
Absolutely spot on. Now we've got some backbone. Ha ha! I like him. He's all right.
the thought of having to go and kill anyone just doesn't sit right with me. I think, people in this country
How about this doesn't sit right with me? The thought of sitting here waiting for someone to come and kill me, that doesn't sit right with me either. So I think he's slightly missing the point, this one. But there you go. Each to their own nowadays. You know what I mean? We've all got to have it, haven't we? An opinion.
actually have opportunities here. I know things aren't great, but we're not so desperate that we need.
Right. So this is the thing. They actually have opportunities here. Yes, they do have opportunities here. And I'm sure there are plenty of opportunities that don't involve going killing people. And hopefully they would be, right? But the trouble is, if you don't look after your country, if you don't look after your boundaries, your borders, and any potential invaders, those opportunities become limited to the point that they might be completely taken off you. Completely taken off you. And you know what that means?
But we're not so desperate that we need to do that.
Well, you see, I'm in the Royal Engineers. If I was to say to anyone, why would you join the forces? It is to kind of cultivate that, I guess, camaraderie. That's a big one. There's something about camping out for a few days in a forest, doing training.
So he loves it, doesn't he? He loves the army. He loves it. Loves it.
The military has even lowered standards to get youth to enlist.
Now, that's a punchy statement right there, lowered standards, right? And trust me now, when I think, in the last couple of months I've visited P Company, I've been up to Guards Depot, I've seen countless youth go through Harrogate, right? Their standards aren't lower, all right? They can only do what's put in front of them, all right? And they're certainly, I'm not having that. I'm not having that statement there. I'm not having it, all right? Because they're just as game, they're just as up for it. And on the day of the race, they'll be just as out of the traps as anybody else, all right? So I don't like it when people say that. That gets what you can tell. That gets my goat up, doesn't it?
Royal Navy removed the 30-minute swim test as a requirement for entry, though they...
Well, that's all right, because you're on a ship. There's no need to swim anyway, is there? So that's not getting rid of something. That's just time consuming. Let's concentrate on the good stuff.
would still need to learn to swim to pass the training. Some experts
That's right. There's a little bit of time there, isn't there? Do you know what I mean? Why make them do it at the very day one? Do you know what I mean? When you've got time and you're trying to get people through the door, do you know what I mean? And actually, if you're in the Navy, hopefully your boat's going to stay afloat. You know, and if it doesn't, you're going to go down with a life jacket and all the rest of it, all right? So actually, being able to swim, is that massively, massively a showstopper? Answer that question yourself.
say this signals a sign of true desperation. Rishi Sunak,
It's not desperation.
the former Prime Minister, even vowed to bring back compulsory national service to drive up recruitment. Earlier this year, the former UK
There's a bloke whose whole family served and his children signed up and all that sort of stuff. He'd know lots about that, wouldn't he?
Army Chief Patrick Sanders said the army needs to hit 120,000 to be ready to fight Russia. Experts have listed a couple of reasons as to why young
And that's a reasonable figure.
people are reluctant to enlist. Unjust Western wars post 9/11 in Iraq and Afghanistan played a key role in declining.
I get that. All right, I can get some of that. All right, and some of the press that it had and all the rest of it, yeah, it would put people off. It genuinely would. But now we're talking about something in our own back garden. Now we're talking about, war in Europe. We're talking about something that could actually affect the way that you live overnight. Do you know what I mean? Just imagine if they were knocking on the door. How many people would be running to grab a gun then? Do you know what I mean? Because I certainly would be, I'm telling you.
Enthusiasm. The story of weapons of mass destruction in Iraq was exposed as a lie. Many young
Right, get your head around all that sort of stuff. For me, it's sort of like, yeah, yada, yada, yada. Let's concentrate on what we're doing now as opposed to picking apart the past and all the rest of it, because that's not going to help you. It's not going to help you.
people fear a repeat situation in future wars and have lost trust in the establishment.
I think lost trust in the establishment is quite a fair point, but like I say, the deal right now is how safe are we in our own country from a number of things, and the Russian thing is looming, it's large, it's on our doorstep, and it needs to be dealt with, and we need to be ready for if that push does become a shove.
Lost trust in the establishment. A January 2024 YouGov survey found that a third of 18 to 40-year-olds would refuse to serve in the army even if the UK entered a world war.
Easy said that. Easy said until your TikTok gets turned off, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? Then once people are actually knocking on the door and they're coming over and you're going, hang on a sec, you'll be scrambling to put more than your helmet on. You'll be wanting to keep them out. I'll tell you that now, because if a push does become a shove, and just say, for instance, we did get overrun, and I'm not suggesting for 1 second that we would, your whole life's going to change. So all that stuff that you're finding nice and all the stuff that you're trying to swerve the army for to go and do, and rightly so, okay, it is under threat. And when it's under threat, you've got to deal with that threat. And that's where I'm coming from. But anyway, here we go.
Or was under threat of invasion. The most common reason people gave was that they do not want to die for the rich and powerful who often escape the consequences.
I get that. And, I've been saying for years that people like that man sat there should be held accountable for their actions. You know what I mean? The investigations should start from the very top down. Do you know what I mean? It's no point getting the guy that kicked the door. Let's get the guy that sent him sometimes. That's exactly where I'm coming from as well. I get that. But that said, none of that helps the threat that's here and now and real. All right? None of that will help that. Okay?
Of conflict themselves. Men do not want to be manipulated to sacrifice their lives for
I also get that. But also, a politician's lie can't disguise the truth if it's on your doorstep and you're actually under the threat of invasion, all right? Because that's a different deal, isn't it? A completely different deal. Think about the interview I did with Colin Bell, all right? Where he says about that Polish officer who quite literally had German soldiers knocking on his door and telling him he had hours to get out or they were coming back to kill each other. When it comes to that stage, you'd better be ready. You better be ready well before that stage to stop that stage from happening. And that's where I'm coming from.
Politicians' lies. And with the military being one of the poorest paid public sector jobs, this makes it even more.
Yeah, I get that as well. I get it, being underpaid and long hours and all the rest of it. Pay them properly, invest a bit more money. So, there's an argument to be said here that we need to put more GDP in the way of our soldiers. So, at the moment, whatever it was 2.4 or whatever the figures are, and don't quote me, all right? That needs to be at least 5 as far as I'm concerned, all right? And you need to pay people properly, and you need to value them, and you need to look after them, and you need to attract people in, and you need blah, 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 blah. You can see where I'm coming from.
Off-putting. Wages have not kept up with the cost of living. The lack of compensation makes such sacrifice even less likely.
That doesn't make sacrifice less likely. You'll have no choice in what sacrifices you make if somebody invades. No choice whatsoever. It won't be up to you anymore. It'll be up to somebody else. You'll have someone else's boot on your neck, and it won't be a friendly boot.
Social commentators.
If you want to remain a democratic country, you need to fight for it with people who understand your values and standards. Otherwise, you'll lose it. It will be taken off you, and you'll have somebody else's values and standards installed in place of your own that you haven't looked after. Fact!
Also say Britain, like other Western democratic countries, has changed from a communal to a deeply individualistic.
Look at World War One. Look at World War One, where 15-year-old school kids were trying their hardest to sign up, even if it meant lying, all right? That's the sort of position they found themselves in when they suddenly realised if we don't do something about it, the whole world's going to sort of like implode on us, and we face a reality which is honking. Do you know what I mean? World War Two. You didn't have a problem with recruitment in World War II, did you? You didn't have people going, I think I'll stay at home. You didn't have that problem, did you? Because they knew there was actually Germans buzzing about in the sky above them. That'll make you fight, won't it? That'll make you fight. And so I don't believe for 1 second that the youth of today really are any different to those people, right? They just haven't seen what they need to do yet. Do you know what I mean? But once they do realise that it's incoming, all right, you have two choices. And there would have been plenty of people back in those days who probably didn't want to fight, and there probably were plenty that didn't fight and found themselves doing other stuff. But everybody took the threat seriously, and everybody understood that if something wasn't done, then your way of life was going to be changed forever, all right? And that's where I'm coming from again.
Society. Being part of the army entails being part of a machine in which an individual is anonymous and expendable. As a result, older generations, often conservative military veterans and politicians, are frustrated.
They can only be what they can see, and if they can't see the wood for the trees yet, hopefully they will before a push becomes a shove.
Apparent lack of patriotic spirit and motivation. They tout national service and or conscription of a citizen army as a way to fight crime and even the threat of Russia. The army has even created adverts to appeal to...
Which, by the way, did quite well. And I know that goes against the grain, and I know there'll be plenty of people out there going, that was the worst advertising thing ever. It wasn't. It actually did really well for the army. Okay, it genuinely did. And I've spoken at the very top with generals about that, because I obviously went up against that when it first came out, and I got called into Whitehall and had my fingers wrapped. All right, I understand it. I understand where you're coming from. You're talking to them. You're not talking to me. All right, you've got to put it in a different way. You've got to put it in a way that they can understand it, not in the way that I understand it. All right. Because they are different. They've done things differently. They've been brought up differently, all right?
To millennial and Gen Z snowflakes, but to little avail. Army recruitment has also been...
Yeah, massive mistake. Massive mistake for me. Massive mistake. Civvies don't run the army like that, all right? They shouldn't be involved at that level. They don't understand it all the time. They don't get it right, okay? And if they are going to use it, it should be more tightly controlled with the military having the final says and the military being the steering body on a lot of this stuff, all right? For me, anyway. And, all right.
Recruitment has also been outsourced to Capita, a third-party company. Often these private firms are more profit.
Absolutely, and that's what I'm getting at, all right? They care more about bums on seats and figures being right and all the rest of it than actually doing what they're supposed to be doing, all right? And I don't, it's not a great mix for me.
Rather than outcome-orientated. Many youth also drop out because of how long it can take to process applications.
Again, that's a Capita problem, do you know what I mean? Get them through the door. If they're keen, get them in. Do you know what I mean? Get them signed up, get them across the line, get them trained, and get them encouraging other people to do it as well. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of variables on this.
From 12 to 18 months. So is the army on its way out?
Is the army on its way? It can't be on its way out. We haven't got an army, we've got nothing. Right, we've had a butchers at all that gumph. Here's what I think. Let me ask you something no politician dares to say out loud. If Britain went to war tomorrow, would today's youth actually fight? Would they stand up for this country, for our values, and for each other? Would they? There's been talk about bringing back conscription. That's right. National service. 2 years in uniform. A bit of discipline, a bit of national pride, and with global tensions flaring, especially with Russia playing silly buggers, under the sea, yeah, you know where, and China eyeing up Taiwan, some say it's now time. But here's the real tactical truth. Would it even work? Because I'm telling you now, we've got a generation coming up that's been That's right, bubble wrapped and dopamine dipped into softness. Look, this isn't some back in my day rant, but the stats don't lie. Obesity is at a record high. Mental health crises are off the charts. Young lads who can't run a mile, who can't switch off their phones for 5 minutes, who'd rather protest against their country than stand up for it, are out there. We know that. And you expect them to hold a rifle, dig in and fight an actual war against hardened Russian Spetsnaz or Iranian operatives who've been scrapping all their lives? Half of them wouldn't pass basic training. The other half would probably want to just tweet about it. Was problematic. And don't get me wrong, there are some absolute diamonds out there. Young men and women who'd make outstanding soldiers if they had the opportunity and the right leadership. But the wider culture, soft, entitled, self-absorbed. Ask yourself this. If we reinstated national service tomorrow, how many would actually step forward? And how many would cry, protest, or claim PTSD at the sight of a drill sergeant? Would they even fight for British values anymore? And before you say, what British values? Well, that's part of the problem, isn't it? Respect, duty, discipline, courage, to name but a few. We used to hold those things up in high regard. Now they're seen as toxic. You tell a lad to toughen up now and you get a complaint to HR. So yeah, bring back conscription if you want, but if you don't fix the spine of our nation first, all you're going to do is send wet cardboard into the raging fire. The armed forces are not an education camp. They're a front line, a forge. And if we expect the next generation to carry the torch, then I'll tell you what, we'd better make sure they've actually got some fire in their bellies. Because if a war kicks off, there won't be any safe spaces, all right? There'll be trenches. And no amount of TikTok followers, likes, subscription will help you then. This is the tactical truth, and I'm Phil Campion. No spin, no sugarcoating, just the brutal question. Would today's youth really fight for Britain? That's right, really fight for Britain. Let me know your thoughts below. And don't forget to subscribe.